Well, apparently the computer wanted to be slow and all along those lines. So get rid of the echo there, and we'll see what's going on in the world. But we do know that there are a number of things taking place in the world, and we're glad to be reporting on them. And all along those lines, I'll bring up Nick shortly. We'll see if Rick shows up. We know that some of our regulars are actually doing something that is a wonderful thing to have happen in your life. They're on vacation. So I think that we'll have the Ukrainian show tomorrow, but I do believe that Sasha may be out of town because he's having that wonderful thing called a vacation. He may even be in Aruba again. I'm not sure whether that's where he went or if he went to someplace else this time around. But I do know that he had that lovely thing called a vacation. We love it when people are able to go on vacations and enjoy themselves on that wonderful notion called a vacation. So that is a wonderful thing. I also saw that I believe Vance and Marco Rubio are meeting with the current Pope because they want to try to smooth over some relationships that had been kind of troublesome and all along those lines. Of course, they just came back from that big Middle Eastern trip, which me and Nick were talking about, where all kinds of things were promised and delivered. And we'll see how that goes, as apparently we're getting all kinds of money, maybe billions, maybe trillions. It's either the T or the B. Maybe it's a million, but definitely getting some money in some of these deals. I know Trump has got a plane out of the deal, and we'll see what other things were put in the deal and all along those lines. I think he's also trying to negotiate or having some phone calls with both Zelensky and Putin. So he's trying to see what he can do, that being the president, Donald Trump, to try to end the war in the European area and particularly Eastern Europe between Ukraine and Russia. So we'll see how that goes and what happens in that regards. And I did see that former President Biden has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So definitely that is something that is in the news as well. So a lot of things are taking place in the world and around the world, and we'll be getting to some of those in further discussions and all in that kind of way. So like I said, trying to get to my news releases so I can tell you all about some of these exciting things that are taking place. But in the meantime, I might bring up Nick, see what he's got to say about this notion of Biden being sick and the money and all along those lines. And then I'll try to get this computer to work so we can get to the news briefs. But in the meantime, I'll bring up Nick and see what he's got to say about a number of these stories and all along those lines. So how are you doing, Nick, and how are things going there in Spain? What are they talking about in Spain? You said they were talking about Biden and his cancer diagnosis, and maybe they're talking about Marco Rubio because the Italy isn't that far from Spain, and Vance going to talk to the Pope because the Pope didn't have some overly friendly words for the administrations. Because the Pope is this man of peace, so he wants there to be peace in the world and all along those lines. And I know that he and Vance had some disagreements around immigration. We'll just leave it at that and everything like that. But what is your take on this meeting? Apparently Rubio and Vance are going to go meet with the Pope. I don't know about you, but I might be, if I was a suspicious person, I might be a little worried if I was Vance, and I mean, if I was the Pope and I was meeting with Vance. Because remember, the last time that the Pope met with a Vance, it did not end all that well. As a matter of fact, I think a day or two later, that particular Pope was gone from the world and everything like that. So, unfortunately, I don't think the Pope is overly suspicious, and he does have, at least according to the Roman Catholics, God on his side and everything like that. But I might be a little nervous if I was the Pope, because the last time that Vance met with a Pope, it didn't end all that well for the Pope.
Yeah, that might be true. But I think with Mark Rubio and JD Vance, it's not going to be, the issue is not so much about the war in Ukraine, because I think they're on the same page there. But I think it's going to be the immigration policy and how you treat immigrants, especially in the United States, where they apparently treat them pretty harshly. And the Pope is not about treating people harshly. So, and the thing is, our immigration policy, if we have one, because it seems to me it swings from one way to the next. So you're all welcome, you're not welcome. People illegally come through the borders. People legally come here all the time. But what happens is that the policies here are just not consistent. But part of it is a long-standing fault of our immigration laws. In other words, making it very difficult and cumbersome for people to apply and become U.S. residents. And so the thing is, I think it boils down to, and then Congress not really getting a hold on it. So we've created a situation. We have a situation here, Mark, where there's like 10 million or more people that live in the United States illegally. In other words, they don't have proper documentation. So I think what Pope Leo is going to do, and I think there's will be some room for compromise and consensus, because Pope Leo is all about treating people as human beings as opposed to numbers on a chart.
Right.
However, we have a big um, influence in the U.S. where they're going, "Hey, we don't want the Mexican cartel gangs." So on the other hand, yeah, how are they going to deal with the violent criminals that actually come in from the southern border? In other words, how do you ferret them out? Now, moving to Spain, I do know how they do it here. They have, first of all, they have very strict gun laws. Okay, the thing is, your Second Amendment does not exist. Neither do guns on the streets. Okay, neither do violent criminals. Okay, basically, I don't know how they get rid of them, but they apparently do get rid of them. What they do have in Spain is pickpockets and petty
Ooh.
thieves. Although, as a matter of fact, it was huge in Barcelona, over 800,000 petty crimes took place because they don't prosecute petty criminals. So they're going to try to institute some changes there on the petty crimes, but on the major crimes, they have hardly any. And if you go look at the stats, it's the whole country. In other words, the murders and the rapes and all that stuff is virtually non-existent. But I do know on immigration, what they do is they do, and this is what they do, is they do
Go
examine
ahead.
people carefully and make sure that they have background checks, FBI checks, fingerprints. I mean, the whole 9 yards, just to get, I think, a TIE. You have to get these different forms, TIEs and NIEs, to get a residence visa here. So they actually put you through a process. Now, because of those background checks, it lessens the likelihood you get some person with a criminal background to enter into the country. All right, now let's go look at the US. They just break through the barriers and they say, I'm here. Okay, that means those people have had no background checks. No one knows anything about them. And then all of a sudden, hey, I'm here. And so this is the problem you have. And it's not a problem with a couple hundred people. You have 10 million problems that are running around right now. So somewhere along the line that Congress needs to get a hold of it and change the system. Now, the change is, of course, because Congress didn't do anything for so long, is they took a sledgehammer to this whole situation. Now, what has it done? It has decreased the amount of people wanting to immigrate illegally into the United States. So, like it or not, it has put a damper on the, oh, let's go to the US attitude, because they see the pictures of people being deported. They see the people being treated harshly, and they see this not being a friendly place. So it has lessened the amount of people that have immigrated or even attempted to immigrate in the United States illegally. So it basically just
Well,
justifies.
speaking of that, I got another story for you that I wanted to know your thoughts about since you are now in Spain. And I've got my news reports back up and everything. But apparently, UK and the European Union have agreed to a post-Brexit reset deal. So 5 years since Brexit, people are asking, are Britain and the EU getting back together? So you're in Spain, and you probably heard about this in the news, but it says that they are moving on from their Brexit disagreement. That's what Keir Starmer said and everything. So what would this mean in terms of a bloc organization? Because I know a lot of times people talk about BRICS. I know even on this network you talk about BRICS and some of the other bloc alliances that are out there. But it looks like the EU, which was already an alliance, is now maybe going to have the UK, a major partner, back in the fold. So they're opening the door to even British arms makers accessing the bloc's procurement program. So maybe the UK will help militarize some of the other nations that are in the EU. But it looks like they are having some cooperation. So you're in Spain. Are they talking about this? And are they thinking that there'll be more cooperation and less protest. Because I do remember Brexit when it happened before the pandemic, and there was a lot of protests in Europe. I think some even in Spain around Brexit. So, what's the
Yeah.
word on Brexit? And are we going to see a reset of the European alliance?
Yeah, this was actually the first part of the news and the BBC and here in Europe was the UK and European Union getting together and smoothing out trade details between the Union and UK. Now, remember, the Union has 443 million people. And they don't realize, people in the United States don't realize how big it is. The Union is actually bigger than the USA right now, only because they brought in all the Eastern Bloc countries. And so the thing is with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Bucharest, Bucharest. I mean, just go on and on. Hungary, Austria, Germany, France, Spain. I mean, the European Union is huge, 443 million. The UK isn't that big. They have England, Scotland, and Wales. That's kind of like
Right.
it. But how did Brexit start? Why did that take place? Oddly enough, it was another issue that they deal with in the United States. The issue that brought in Brexit was immigration. What they didn't like in the UK was the European Union telling them, "Hey, look, all these people from Syria, come on down. All these people from sub-Saharan Africa, come on in." And the European Union goes, "No, yes." The European Union goes, "Yes," and the UK goes, "No." And so the immigration was actually the cause of Brexit. It was a pretty close vote. But the thing is, was the immigration issue that swung UK out of the European Union is they didn't want to deal with the immigrant problem. And it's funny because you do have what I call good immigrants and bad immigrants. I mean, it's just the way it is. But I think it was the major influx that took place. A lot of them were actually from Syria, which I think right
Well,
now most of
speaking,
what.
go ahead. Yeah, but speaking of
Well,
that, and all along those lines,
usually
we do have
think about
Sasha.
the immigrants that come from countries that are just stable, are basically having issues. Like in the United States, you're getting them from Venezuela, and Venezuela is a wreck, and that's part of the reason why they're going, "Hey, we don't want your trash. You created your trash. Stay in your own hometown." And so the same thing with Syria. So
Yeah,
this is a big problem, and there's it's like I said, I think it can be solved through vetting properly, but that's not what people do. Is they just they get on boats and say, "Here I am." Well, then I would put them on a boat and say, "No, you're not,"
You
and
know,
go back.
the exit of Britain from European Union. Um, if you're saying it's because of the immigration policy, I would like to remind you about Poland, who is still a member of European Union, but
Yeah.
yet does not allow immigration to Poland.
Mhm.
So why UK couldn't do the same thing what Poland did and get away with?
That part I don't know, Sasha. In
Yeah.
other words, I don't know because the thing
good
is,
question. But Sasha, I do have a question for you about Poland, and it came up in the news as well because me and Nick were talking about some of the news items. But as you know, there is sometimes a sway either to the left or to the right, depending on people's politics. But they're saying that in Eastern Europe, an area that you know well, Sasha, the centrists held off two nationalist challengers. So in Romania, the pro-EU candidate unexpectedly beat the hard right rival to win the presidential race, and they're saying that there were liberal people that won in Romania, Poland, and Portugal, and now people are trying to figure out what this all means, since apparently those that are more centrist views, as opposed to either being nationalist or hard left or hard right, are the ones that are winning. So they're saying liberal Mayor Dan beat the nationalists in a tense race for Romania's president, and I think there were similar results in both Poland and in Portugal. So, what's your take on this move to the center in some of these European countries, including some that you are familiar with?
My take is very simple. People who vote, they don't care about sociological studies and reasoning why this happening or that happened. They are voting for a candidate that they prefer and want to win. That's just as simple as that. They don't care about what people will calculate and think about it and then play with that and so on. They don't. they vote. By the way, Poland is quite important to me because that's where I'm flying tonight.
Oh, you will? You're going to Poland? Are you going to Warsaw from where you're at?
Warsaw and a couple of days in Krakow, but
Okay.
mostly
Do you have a non-stop from Toronto to Warsaw?
non-stop Toronto,
My
Warsaw
thought, right.
by a lot.
Air Canada? Do you take Air Canada?
No, Air Canada doesn't fly directly to Warsaw, but
Who flies?
lot airlines fly.
Lot. Okay, a
Yeah,
lot of the airline
that's
of
the airlines. You have Dreamliner and
right. Oh,
Grace.
you're on a 787 Dreamliner?
Yeah,
Oh, I love that plane. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I fly a lot of different types
there
of
is
planes.
one plane which much better than
Which,
Dreamliner.
what
It's
is it?
Airbus 350.
Yeah,
If
I've been on the
that
350 also, but
350
you
is,
know, the thing is, I'm biased toward Boeing's air.
well, if you're flying in business class in 350, you
Yeah.
can whisper to
Oh,
your.
really? Okay. I see. I don't know what
There's
I'm
no
on.
noise in the cabin at
Yeah,
all.
I'm going back to the States. I got to figure out
Well,
what.
speaking of, yeah, those planes sound fascinating. We got Rick with it as well. And by the way, in the Poland election, let's see if I can get this name pronounced right, Rafael Trzaskowski, which is Warsaw's liberal mayor, apparently nearly won the Polish presidential vote. So that's who won that particular race and everything. So that's
Yeah,
what it is.
Sasha, why are you going to Poland? That's like a bit of a hike. What's the
Okay,
deal?
I wanted to visit a few European countries. Most of them are in Eastern Europe. So
Right.
Poland is a very special place for me because that's where I had business, and my partner is my very good friend. It's very seldom when you sell your shares to your partner and you remain friends. But that's
That's
what happened in my case. It's,
yeah.
it's not very common situation. And so we will be staying there for 6 days. And I will go to Krakow for a day or two,
Yeah.
maybe. And then we are flying from Warsaw to Riga. And in
Oh,
Riga,
Riga. Yes.
yeah,
So what are you going to Riga for? That's all
five
my.
days, and there are some good friends there. Grandmaster Shirov will take care
Yeah,
of
Derek Sharov is from
will
Riga.
show
Yeah,
us a
so
few
Does
things.
he still live in Riga because he moved to Spain for a while?
yeah, gonna get some good visits. We got Rick with us, and I got because he's brought it up a couple of times because I know Trump had all these wonderful things that he wanted to do, including Greenland, and apparently China. I know one of Nick's favorite people says that they fully respect Denmark's sovereignty in Greenland. That's according to their foreign minister, and apparently he's messaging Danish businessmen ahead of his foreign minister's China visit. So I think some of the Danish people are coming to him and everything like that. So Denmark is in frank talks over China's support for Russia, and the China and Danish foreign ministers are vowing to enhance ties and cooperation in their Beijing talks. So yeah, the Danish
The
people are
whole
going to
world,
Beijing.
the whole
We're going to
world
take
owes a
Greenland
thank you
anyway.
to Donald Trump because all these liberal governments are getting elected. Last year, 88% of government were conservatives won in 88% of national elections in 2024. This year, it's the liberals who are winning, largely because the world has the bad example of Trump to go off of and are going like, hell no, let's get some liberals in.
Yeah, Dr.
Someday,
Sharif here too. And by the
I
way,
think
Dr. Sharif,
that permeated most of the people in America. You know, the thing is, that's not the reports I'm getting. So you must be listening to the liberal.
no, there are different reports from
Actually,
different people, but I do have a question for everybody, and we do have Dr. Sharif, and we know that sometimes governments, because there's then the talk of Alcatraz being turned into a reopened as a prison, and I guess they might do something similar with Rikers and everything. But apparently the French, some of our people, I know Chris Greco used to love the French and everything, who still sometimes comes on our network, but they're planning to open a new high security prison in French Guyana. So thinking that if you want to have high security, putting it in a jungle might be a great idea because France is going to build a drug jungle prison to hold drug kingpins. So that France is to open
none of
a
this crap is going to
supermax.
happen. Hold
France
on,
is to
hold
open a
on.
supermax jungle prison to combat drug trafficking. So that's what they're going to do and it's going to be near the notorious Devil's Island penal colony site. But it's supposed to be a supermax style prison near a jungle. So even if you escape the lions and tigers and whatever else might get you as well.
It's
But that's
just hold on. It's just dumb noise from Trump. Alcatraz will never ever reopen as a prison. It would cost $100 million to refit it. It's a boondoggle. Now
No,
Rikers
I hear what you're.
already operates as a prison, so they could very much more easily and economically do something with the facilities there. Probably not improve them. Rikers
But
is
Rick, that's kind of the point I was making is that we have other countries that are being very harsh in the way that they build their prisons. So is Donald Trump getting some of these ideas from the French
yeah,
and
but they're
French
dumb
Guyana?
ideas, and that's not how it works in the U.S. We have a larger percentage of our population in prison than any other country. We have plenty of prisons. We have plenty of people in prison. We don't need to reopen Alcatraz at some exorbitant cost because Trump is like reading about harsh prisons in other countries.
Right.
Trump,
Hey, Rick and Nick, I got a question for both of you. Since we oftentimes, and I know Kim, I wish he was here, is a big fan of TikTok and everything. And apparently, we have our not first, but our second influencer that has been shot dead. This one was a Colombian influencer after the Mexican influencer was killed, and I think this one was also shot doing a live stream. So the people that are doing live streams need to be worrying because apparently this was a Colombian model, a very young lady, 22 and everything, and she was shot dead by a hitman posing as a delivery driver with a fake president. So he was delivering a fake president and then shot her. So I'm wondering, do the influencers need to be? You're an influencer to some degree, Rick. Do you need to be worried because of these crazy people that are just taking pot shots at influencers
no,
and all along those lines?
I don't have to. Most of my followers are bots, so no, they're not. Bots don't shoot you yet. I just looked up Rikers. So Rikers holds 60 is holding 6,200 people, which is a 10% increase from the previous year. So Rikers is a shithole, and obviously not getting better because they just keep throwing more people in there. So they can do something
Yeah,
about
Rikers
it.
has always been a yeah,
Yeah, that's a little
yeah. Rikers
while.
has always been a shithole.
Yeah.
Hey,
Uh,
I got some good news, and it's involving one of your people that you sometimes get news from. Since Therese here, and he likes to hear some good news from the world as well, and everything. And I know that we have had some relationships. Connect me, or correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, with the fine folks at Nepal. And a British mountaineer broke his own record for most Everest climbs by a non-Nepali. So British Kenton Cool reached his record, the 19th summit. So he made his 19th ascent of Everest, and that's the most by a non-Sherpa, which is the residents of Nepal. So apparently he's having a real good time climbing up and down Mount Everest and all along those lines. And I do know, if I remember correctly, that we have some interest and some people that come in every once in a while from Nepal. Maybe they're climbing the mountains as well. But yes, apparently he has done this now 19 times and has done well in these climbs.
could be. Well,
So I
let's
don't know
get
if
a
you had any
report
thoughts.
in Asia and something positive, because Dr. Sharif is always positive. So what's positively happening in the Asian area?
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah,
share
what's happening
some.
in Asia?
Yeah, I just want to share some good news
Yeah.
from Asia. First thing first, ISRO doing excellent research for space industry. So India successfully test reusable space shuttle prototype. India Space Agency, like ISRO, has successfully tested a reusable launch vehicles prototype, a major step toward reducing satellite launch cost. This development strengthens India's growth role in the global space economy and support sustainable space explorations. My World Talent Economic Forum, we are working with NASA and SpaceX, and we develop our startup for emerging economy. We call it Share Star. So emerging economy has a lot of young people, and we're going to train these young people through this process. Number two, Philippine passes bill to provide free dialysis in all citizens. Dialysis is very expensive in Asia. So Philippine Senate has approved a bill mandating free dialysis treatment for all citizens with chronic kidney disease. Healthcare is massively problem around Asia Pacific. So this move is expected to save thousands of lives and ease the financial burden on low income family. I really appreciate the initiative of Philippines. Finally, Bangladesh achieved record growth in renewable energy projects. Bangladesh has announced over $2 billion new investment for solar and wind energy, aiming to generate 40% of its power for renewable energy by 2041. This positioned the country as a leader in the clean energy in South Asia. Besides that, our World Talent Economic Forum institutions with USA, with the collaborations with St. Edward Universities, with Tando, with Big Heart Technologies, and with the collaborations of Japan UN University, we are developing climate leadership program. So all of the emerging economy, young talented people, next 5 years, on and scholar from Japan and from USA, we develop a new leadership approach for this world, and hopefully it can solve real leadership problem in emerging economy, in USA, and in Japan. So I
Hey,
want to invite you all.
yeah, but Sharif, along those same lines, I did see a news story where a Japanese manga claims a natural disaster is imminent in that area, and now some tourists are canceling their trips to Asia. So I just wondered, what is the state of these natural disasters? Are y'all expecting a typhoon or a earthquake or something along those lines? Because I did see that this is something that they are claiming that it is could be coming anytime here in the year 2025, or maybe next year, but it sounds as if they're saying imminent. It'll probably be sometime this year. But how are folks reacting to some of these natural disasters that are being projected?
This is very good point. I think that this is the area. I think the developed nations and developing nation from Asia Pacific we can work. Natural disasters is very common. That's why the Himalayas. If you see this South Asian region, you see major water source come from Himalaya. Then it's go to Ganga. From Ganga, it's go to Padma in Bangladesh. Then it's go to Bay of Bengal. So we are taking initiative to solve the complex problem and developing master plan for this area. Japan is very good friend of us. We are inventing new technology innovations for housing industry, for renewable energy, for water treatments to solve this complex problem. I know USA has lot of good technology, lot of good startup who has the ability to solve this kind of complex problem. So maybe we can bring these things for our urban planning.
Mhm.
So with this urban planning, I think uh, we can solve this problem. But not only Japan. Honestly speaking, Dhaka, where I live, Delhi, uh, the capital of India, Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia. All of the cities have different complex problem, which is related to climate change and
Yeah, that makes a
earthquake.
lot of sense. Hey, Nick, this is for you, and it involves your place of home now, because apparently it's now coming out, even though it might have happened a couple of days ago, and all along those lines. But apparently, a passenger jet carrying 200 flew for 10 minutes with no pilot after the co-pilot fainted in the cockpit, and they was carrying 200 passengers that were flying from Germany to Spain. So apparently, Lufthansa plane flew without a pilot for 10 minutes. The captain was in the bathroom and the co-pilot fainted, but they managed because I guess they got all that high-tech equipment to fly without having a pilot in the pilot seat and all along those lines. So what is your thoughts around this? Do you feel safe when you get on the plane? Because apparently if the captain decides to go to the bathroom and the co-pilot faints for whatever reason, you're still in good shape because apparently the plane can fly itself. So that's what
Well,
people are talking
90% of the mishaps involving planes are on takeoff and landing.
about.
So yeah, if it's in mid-flight, there have been a number of incidents where, like, both pilots have fallen asleep for a while.
Right.
It's not that dangerous when you're 7 miles above the ground and just
Yeah.
it's so. I mean, yeah, it's not great. Um,
Yeah. It's not great, but you don't want to have your pilots falling asleep, just like you don't want any drivers falling asleep and everything. Maybe Kim's got some ideas because she's joined us as well. Kim, have you been on any flights where somebody has flown or fallen asleep? Because that apparently happened in Germany to Spain and everything like that. So, what's your take on it? Because I know you're a big advocate of plane safety, and we do know that some planes have just been having near misses, falling out the sky. But you're actually on a trip, which means you probably went on a plane recently. So, how are you feeling about plane safety?
A lot. Actually, I'm in Puerto Rico this morning. Arrived midnight last night to our final destination. So it's absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, and it's interesting. The more and more I fly, when we land, everyone in the planes. Now, it used to be just Southwest, but now every flight I've been on, everyone claps, everyone cheers, and it's like you're everyone is thanking the pilot. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because we've heard about so many plane crashes, right? And so I don't know about falling asleep, but I am going to just give a little warning again. Our president, Trump, hired the wrong person to be head of TSA. I'm just saying, somebody who's an ex Fox News reporter and retired, what do you call it?
Reality star. He was on
Reality
the real.
TV show host does not make merit to run the TSA. He's a good spokesperson. Yeah, I probably would have made him head of my speaking for me rather than that dumb girl. But you know, he's not. I mean, the first thing he did was fire people, of course, based on DEI reasons. That should have never happened because things were functioning. They needed more people. He fired people when they were understaffed and overworked. They all went to mandatory 16-hour days. You don't work people in the towers at that rate. The other problem that they have, not just that Newark keeps going down because of bad equipment, but the other problem is the fact that they are working mandatory 16-hour days, 6 days a week. But you don't people whose lives depend on you, you don't do that to. But I'm also told that where you're supposed to have like four people manning a tower, sometimes they only have one. So this is the problems that we're having, not just that pilots are overworked and falling asleep, but pilots are not supposed to fly past their hour. I've seen them cancel flights and the pilot has to walk off the plane until they find another pilot. So
So in Duffy's defense, he seems to be worried about the situation. He's not as cavalier as. Hold on.
doesn't make him have merit. I can be
That's true,
worried about
but
my son dying of
he's
cancer, but it doesn't mean that I can fix him,
right. So,
right?
but he's not the one who fired. Doge came in and fired him. I
Doesn't matter. He's head of TSA.
Yeah. All right, but like
And
among
he agreed to it.
the bad eggs in the Trump cabinet, I feel like he's one of the lesser. Or I've read that he's not as terrible as some others, though he's got more like lives in his hands as running all
Yeah.
these.
I mean, if I'm dying of cancer, I want somebody who cares about me but knows how to work on me. He has no merit. He has no credentials to be in the position he's in. Absolutely none. Let him be a spokesperson for Trump. If he's good at that. He really is. So you put him there, but he has no mental capacity for the job that he is doing whatsoever. I'm just
Okay.
saying it's made me very nervous. I do what I do for travel now only when I have to. If it's an emergency, an urgent matter, I am staying away from planes. Other than that, and I canceled all of my international flights, all of them.
Well,
Um,
speaking of that, Kim, there's another topic that we oftentimes talk about, and it's back in the news. And I definitely want to hear what folks got to say about it and everything. Maybe even bringing in Jacoby on this one as well. But we do know that a lot of students are worried because of some of the things that are going on, and the students and the colleges came up twice in the news. One was saying that some of these college towns, and we know UNC can be a college town, have gone from boom to bust because of some of the enforcement rules that have been going on in the way that Trump is targeting them, whether it's Harvard or some of the other ones as well. So they're saying the American college towns have gone from boom to bust, and they're saying colleges have to walk a fine line. And we also know some of that has to do with the international students, and some of those have been reinstated. So the U.S. has reinstated records for international students, but for some, it's too late. So students are living under a cloud of uncertainty as government cracks down on visa and permits. And while U.S. colleges fear losing billions as Trump era policies push international students toward Europe. So I guess a lot of students might be doing like your kid did, Rick, and heading to college in the European theater and all along those lines. So, what is our take on?
I'm preaching that right now. I'm telling people don't send your kids to America, especially if you're an American family. Send them
So
somewhere
if
else.
you can, yeah, European colleges. A U.S.
Yep.
elite college will run you for 4 years close to 400 grand, including room and board. If you can get your kid into a great college like Cambridge or Oxford, which is tough. I mean, that's a brutal thing to try to get in. That'll run less than half. Like I think Cambridge and Harvard are probably like 25 grand a year, which is
And in some of the foreign schools, you can qualify for some really good scholarship programs and assistance. So,
plus
yeah.
then you're over in England or Germany or what, and you're away from a lot of the political hoo-ha that's going on here. So I looked up incarceration, and it, from the 70s until the 2000s, the number of people in prison in America increased by 500%, went from 250,000 to 1.5 million. Almost all of that, I believe, was the war on drugs and the prosecutions. And Jacoby can check me on this. Largely fell on black people, where we went crazy prosecuting crack, but cocaine, which is the same freaking drug that you put up your nose, people tended to get away with. Then under Trump, his first administration, he knocked down the number of people in prison by 15 to 20%. Now it's been creeping up again, and now he's trying to sound as mean as he can about throwing people in
So
prison.
he's sounding mean, but did you see they had 10 very violent, disturbing criminals escape?
Yeah, got out in New Orleans, but Louisiana is a completely dysfunctional government. It's one of the worst states in the whole
I
country.
know, but how many years has it been since you've seen a prison break like this? I bet you they get pardoned by the time they get caught.
And when I saw a picture of the hole they cut, and on top of the hole they wrote "too easy."
They wrote too easy. That's crazy and everything. Speaking of Trump,
I think it's intentional. I think Trump helped them so that he can push getting Alcatraz built.
He's trying to get Alcatraz built. But Jacoby, you had a point.
Yeah. So I know under the Obama administration, they had started cutting back on private prisons because, Rick, what you just pointed out is the reason why even in the TV show Newsroom, they pointed it out. Yeah, one of the biggest industries in the U.S. is incarceration because private prisons make a ton of money, and that's what popped up. So I know that the private federal prisons were being closed down up under Obama, and I don't know how how far the rates began to drop at that time, and I know that they are starting to pick back up because of the fact that we're going back into the private prison business. Hence the reason why Trump wants to open these private prisons, and his buddies who donated to him own private prisons. And that's why with the immigration situation, why did he send people to El Salvador? Because they are paying him money. It's a private prison. They can give him money for. It's the same thing.
They're paying him money, not the U.S.
So
they're paying Trump money. We don't see a dime of it.
Yeah. So my question, I guess, comes around to how long must we wait, and at what point do we all think that we have to get to before we understand that brown people are being thrown into jails all across the world now? And
brown people, it was a brown person that finally got around to it, and it is a Democrat, but I think it happened over the weekend. I don't think it stands much chance, but I want to say it was an Indian American that has brought articles of impeachment against Trump, and that came up over the weekend as well, because he was saying those things are treasonous and all along those lines.
Right now, that's not really even going to do anything. That's just that's nothing big, because of the fact it's become a political talking point thanks to what Trump has done with the messaging around that. But my question is at what point do we have to get to seeing the individuals being shipped everywhere across the globe, mostly brown people, mostly, if not all brown people? When do we get to understanding that the one poem around around the Holocaust that we always talk about? When do we start saying this is a reality? That poem is real.
MAGA doesn't see it because they've already, and I know this because I've been listening. I mean, I'm not really friends with MAGA people anymore, but I try to stay in the loop so I can hear what they're talking about. Their news is totally different than ours. And it's almost like they're being taught what to say because they all talk the same, have the same excuses. They all have the same pump up of Trump. Oh my God, he drove the tariffs down to 10%. Well, he drove them, and then they go, and it was like 120%. Well, Biden didn't put it to 120, but you can't argue with them. And then it's always, you're just against him, and I'm like, yeah.
Well,
So
they've come with a
the
new
brainwashing went one step up. Now that he has control of a TV network that they all watch, and he will be starting his own real soon. What's her name is going to be followed by cameras all day long. Caroline. So
Carolyn Levitt.
yeah. So I don't like her, so I'm already erasing her from my brain. But I keep asking, when are they going to go J6 on him, right? Because. And I don't know if you guys watched the Congress thing, where he kept saying no taxes on tips or overtime, but they just held a congressional meeting and they were going to raise on middle class and low class income 74%. 74%.
Hey, Kim and Rick, what did
You
you say?
have to watch the hearings and you have to pay close.
Kim and Rick,
Kim, just to
even
point out,
Toby as well. I have a quick question, and it's based on what y'all
before
are
we
saying.
get off that,
How do you answer to the people on that side that have come up with this new term that they love to throw at our face, which is Trump derangement syndrome? So what do you say to people that say that when we are complaining about that, we have Trump derangement
Well,
syndrome?
they call Joe Sleepy Joe. I'd rather have Sleepy Joe do nothing than derangement terrorizing.
Right, so each side throws Trump derangement syndrome at the other side.
Yeah, well, they throw Trump derangement or
but
Sleepy Joe.
When you look at what Trump has actually done, he's done a bunch of shitty stuff.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to point out
the kid who colors the furniture. He did a lot in 5 minutes.
Kim, when you pointed out the 73 or 74% that they were going to raise it, it's not were. They just bent the knee. They are.
No, it's not. I didn't say, but they are going to. The thing is that they just had the hearing. So what he did was he spread it out. So this year they're going to go up 25% on middle class so that they can continue the 40% cut for upper class. The next year it's going to go up. And it's funny because Democrats were reading it out loud, and they go, oh, so then the next year you're going up 50%. That's not to 50%. That's up 50%. And then we didn't think we were reading this right. We thought this was a typo. But is this right? This is 74%. And the Republicans go, yeah, we had to do that because of the cost of health care. What cost of health care? What cost of health care? Are they giving health care to the rich now? I don't know. So, and they asked that. And there was no answer. So
they don't really have answers for what they're doing. It was just basically, it's Project 2025. That's all they're really putting out there.
It's worse than 2025. It is worse than 2025. So that tax increase that you got that tax decrease you got for no tips on tax, right? They're going to tax your wages, your minimum wage. You're still going to, and so what they did was they increased that to 74%. So you're not being taxed, 20% on tips anymore, but you are going to be taxed 74% on your minimum wage.
But the thing is, though, Kim, check this out: the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Well, with the way the prices are going up, tips won't be there anymore, so you're not going to get tipped anyway. On top of that, overtime, they're cutting out overtime. So how can you have tax on something that isn't going to be available to you? So they're killing it.
Right. I mean, the promises were
not going to be available at
all. Right. There are a bunch of numbers flying around, which is how the Republicans like it. It's like when you lease a car, the more numbers they can throw at you, the more confused people get.
Oh, I know.
All right, so I'm looking at, hold on, let me finish my point here. I'm looking at this chart for 2026, and the top 1 in 1,000 people, the top 0.1% will, under this bill, will save nearly $400 billion, while the poorest 1/5 will, on average, pay $1,000 more in taxes. The second poorest 1/5 of the population will pay $700 more. The middle fifth, no change. The 60 to 80%, the fourth quintile of rich people will get a little bump. The big bumps are for the 1% and especially the 0.1%.
No, there's no big bump on 1%.
One more thing.
There's no big bump there.
Hold on.
Because they get 40%
Hold on. One more thing is how much extra people will pay for cut services in Social Security and Medicare. Medicare is going to have nearly what $880 billion cut. Some
Medicare.
crazy number.
So that's the one that the elderly rely on, right?
Yeah, that's the one that the elderly rely on.
But Rick, the thing that bothers me is they go, oh, well, they're going up on top 1%, but you forget that they're getting a 40% cut. And I have asked for this math to be done many times. How much does the tax have to go up on the top 1% in order to zero out the 40% cut? It's a lot. It's a lot. When you're giving somebody a 40% cut on the top end, then you're going to have to give them more than 60% to break even. So it's go to just zero out.
Just to point out the even more cruelty. Of course, not only the work requirement that they're trying to throw on for Medicare as well, but one thing that we always forget, because we always talk about the elderly, there's a huge, and I mean huge, population that we always forget, which is a special needs community. Guess what they rely on as well? It's the same thing that they're about to cut. So those services and everything else that they have right now are about to get jacked up, and many families will not be able to afford speech OT therapy or speech therapy or all the different therapies that their children need, because those prices are about to skyrocket because of these cuts.
Now it could cause maybe, I would love to see insurance go away and we go back to paying the way we used to pay back probably before you were born, Jatovi. But we used to not have to. I mean, when I was a teenager, I paid for some of my own medical care, and I had some good jobs, and I would go pay the doctor myself, and it would cost me $25. I had no premiums to pay. So, premiums today can cost you up to $30,000 if you're depending on your situation.
But the thing is, I get all that and I understand all that, but the issue with that, take for instance, you have to go for cancer treatments. Cancer treatments themselves are covered in a huge pool of people. So therefore, those treatments, one, are going to be expensive if you came out of pocket, which people actually try and do, and they go bankrupt. Same thing if you look at a lot of,
it doesn't have to be. If you get rid of insurance, you'll get rid of the
No, you're not. You're not, because the reason you're not going to get rid of a lot of overhead is because hospitals, there are a lot in the medical industry. Remember, we are a country that everything is for sale. So when you're taking away a particular thing, you're not going.
Well, what you're going to eliminate
Here,
is
we'll look at vets.
We look at that and
We'll look at
everything.
vets.
Hey,
Check
Kim,
this out.
Kim and
Hold on,
Kachumi,
real
really
quick,
quickly.
Mark. Hold on, real quick, Mark. Let me finish this point. We'll look at vets, for example. Vets, when you take your dog to the vet, and for example, if they have a heart condition, do you know it's going to cost over about $1,000, $2,000? That's out of pocket. That's the same thing that we used to do. What you're talking about? Oh, even $4,000. There was actually, I even had a buddy. Check this out. I had a buddy who just had their dog that was bitten by a snake, and that cost just for that dog, and it was a 15-pound dog, to get the antidote for that snake, because there are lots of snakes around. To get the antidote was $12,000. So if you're talking about paying out of pocket now just for health care, that's going to be roughly the same amount you're going to cost, because the reason it's so expensive is because it's a necessity and everything is for sale.
Other countries in America, but I'm just saying, I'm hoping that we bust
Other countries have that government supplemented insurance. We don't have that. They have a single payer setup.
Like Canada's got it and other people have got it.
They have insurance and single payer setup.
Got taken care of. So
single payer setup.
Kim,
it can be done, and
it can be done, but it's a matter of the will to have it done.
Can we talk about where the tax
government supplement?
Can we talk about where the tax bill, Pat, was stalled in the House Budget Committee because some hardline Republicans thought it wasn't mean enough. It didn't make enough cuts. So I guess they've negotiated some more cuts, and it is now passed the House Budget Committee. In all its badness, this thing will add $4 to $5 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. So it doesn't pay for itself. It'll take 8.8 million people off of Medicare altogether. It does a lot of mean shit. And
so it's going to take 8.8 million people off of Medicare?
Yeah, I think so. And
wow.
Yeah, and then it's also, isn't it, Rick, going to kick off something like 14 million people off of healthcare too? Not Medicare. I'm talking about healthcare.
It does a lot of terrible stuff, and they think they can get it passed before the Memorial Day weekend.
That's what they're trying to do, which is next weekend and everything, or this coming weekend. But
if I were an immigrant, I wouldn't come to America to begin
Kim,
with.
that's what I actually was going to ask Kim.
That's the wildest part.
Hold on a second, Kim. That's what I was going to ask you, because you're in Puerto Rico and you can do some reporting research and everything. Because I do remember that Puerto Rico at one time was very adamant about wanting either statehood or its own independence. I don't know where that stands now and everything like that. So while you're in Puerto Rico, try to find out if that movement is still out there.
There's a thing where you think you're independent, but you're not. Right. They're still pretty much, but their whole healthcare system took on the American healthcare system, and that's really sad. Yeah. It's very sad, because I don't think they get the health care they used to get here for the cost. But I want to add that the majority expense of our healthcare system goes to administration and processing insurance into the insurance company. If I don't know if any of you have dental insurance right now or dental care, but years ago I talked to my dentist and I said, you know what? I would just rather pay you directly, $35 a month than the insurance company, and you're getting the money and you give me a discount and clean my teeth twice a year. So he actually went to that thing, and then he retired, and the new dentist does the same thing, except she went up $5. But I found out that other dentists are doing that, but they only need one admin. They don't use insurance anymore. And, I get my tooth cleaning, and if I need extra work, I get a really big discount, but I can afford that rather than getting we're not going to pay for that. We're not going to pay for that, but you're going to pay us $100 a month. I don't have to deal with that.
So I have a couple of things. One is United Healthcare, whose CEO was assassinated by that Luigi guy, is collapsing. Their stock price has dropped more than 50%. They are under investigation for Medicare fraud. That company is in trouble.
That man helped crack that open. He helped crack open the fraud.
So there's a lot of fraud in a lot of different healthcare industry portions, including hospice care and stuff like that. In the dentist industry, having a family member who is a dentist, has her own business, and I've helped run that business for a little bit. It costs a lot of money, and that's not due to insurance. Like crowns are expensive.
But when you have to hire admin to monitor them,
I'm
the money
just
doesn't
saying,
come to you. $10 per visit comes to you. 10. That's it.
Again,
that's all you get.
Just to point out again, having a family member who has.
But I sat down. Mine was family member too, and I sat down and talked.
It
was in my wedding.
I've seen the pricings on these things, and that's without insurance, and they are expensive.
Yeah,
and
but
a lot of people that get paid a lot.
He bit the bullet. He bit the bullet.
All right, but let's talk about the technology.
My
hold on.
clients pay me $35 a month, and I get to keep the money.
Yeah, that's for
and
cleaning.
the money comes in.
Cleaning is low tech. But crowns, where they print out the crown instantly, you don't have to go back 3 times to get it fit. That technology is high tech, and I'm sure it costs tens of thousands of bucks to buy the machine. The 3D X-ray technology. You're right. The good technology is expensive.
Yeah.
Hold on. I want to talk about self-deporting. The most successful self-deporting program in the history of the U.S. was when the economy crashed after 2007 and 8. And under Obama, 1 million people, because the economy here sucked, went back to their countries of origin. 1 million undocumented immigrants. If Trump crashes the economy with his stupid tariffs, and we may get another 1 million people going home because it sucks here.
Well, that could be the case. We're going to wrap up things very shortly and all along those lines, because we've actually got, speaking of self-deportation and the economy, we've got the economy show coming up at the 11 o'clock hour. And in addition to David Walker, Jonathan Lockwood, and Sasha will be there. That's part of the reason that they bounce and everything, because they're going to be talking about the economy of the Ukraine war and how much money we might be dealing with that and all along those lines. So that's part of their discussion. And of course, they'll be talking about one of Jonathan's favorite things, which I know Jacoby doesn't think is a reality, and I'm not sure that I believe in it either, which is that whole notion of Star Wars and an Iron Dome over the United States, because I know that Jonathan is a big proponent of this whole idea of an Iron Dome over the U.S., which I think would be very hard to maintain and to create.
All right. Well, so I look forward to lots of yelling in the next hour.
Should be a lot of yelling in the next hour. So we'll see what goes on in that space. So I'll catch y'all over there, hopefully, if y'all got that invitation. If not, I'll put it in here in chat in a second after we end this.